He is a legal eagle who believes that design can exhibit ethics and governance in digital products. He is a partner at Trilegal, specializing in data privacy and protection, among other things. Please welcome Rahul Matthan.
Hi, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm a lawyer in a room full of designers. We've all seen infographics like this. We're consuming an inordinate amount of data these days. And this is just the internet. If you add the data that is coming off my watch and my Oura ring and the phone in my pocket and the smart device at home, we're bleeding data. And we love it because all of this data is producing such wonderful things for us. We're getting entertained, in many ways, we're getting to live our lives today in a way that we were never able to live before. But there's a dark side to data as well. And in 2016, the United States realized that the information that they gave about the friends of their friends could be weaponized to affect the way in which they thought about certain things. And if you've seen The Social Dilemma, you know the various other ways in which data can harm you, can get you into trouble. All the data that we've given out, we feel in a sense that we've lost control of where it is and who's doing what with it. And the reason why this has happened is because the incentives are aligned in favor of taking as much data and doing as much as you can with it. Shoshana Zuboff calls this surveillance capitalism, where the capitalist incentive is to actually do surveillance. India had its moment where it sort of felt that it lost control. And that was around Aadhaar. There was a time when Aadhaar was being connected to just about anything, to your bank account, to your mobile phone, to your tax. And as a result of that, there was a big pushback. A number of cases were filed, and it all started with a case by this gentleman who is retired Justice Puttaswamy. And Justice Puttaswamy said that the whole Aadhaar scheme violates my fundamental right to privacy. It's a strange assertion. Because if you read the Constitution, there is no fundamental right to privacy. But for the last 40 years or so, the courts in India were interpreting that the right to privacy existed in all of the other rights. And so it was very surprising to all of us in the legal fraternity when the Solicitor General of the country stood up in court and said there is no such thing as a fundamental right to privacy. And actually he was right. Because very early on in India's constitutional journey, the Supreme Court, an 8-judge bench of the Supreme Court had said, reading the Constitution literally, that there is no such thing as a fundamental right to privacy. And that is why, in this case, we had to convene 9 judges, the largest bench of the Supreme Court ever to decide on a question of privacy, to actually hold that there is a right to privacy. One of the side benefits of this was that the government decided to enact a law, and it convened a committee with a retired justice of the Supreme Court, Justice Sri Krishna, just in case you're confused. That's Justice Sri Krishna. Justice Sri Krishna came out with a report, and he came out with a law. The law is called the Personal Data Protection Bill. We call it the PDP Bill. This happened in 2018. And his idea was to change this feeling of losing control and replacing it with some way in which we could give people back their control. And he said that he'd do that by putting the user at the center. But how do you do something like that? Well, I'm going to give you, in the 15 minutes left, a short crash course in privacy that I've been studying for the last 30 years, and that's got a jurisprudence that, So forgive me if it's a little abbreviated. Don't go by any of this as legal advice. But essentially, privacy is around protecting your personal data. So privacy is around ensuring that when personal data is collected, things are done in an appropriate way with it. And how do you do that? And I'm going to boil it down to 3 things that you've got to remember. And once you've understood these 3 things, you've pretty much understood all of what privacy is about. So the first thing is that you can only collect information, personal information, after you've provided people with notice as to the fact that you're collecting it, and you've got their consent. Simple. The second thing is that you can only collect data for a specified purpose. And once you've collected it for that purpose, you can't use it for any other purpose limitation. And the third thing is that you've got to collect only as much data as is required. And you've got to keep that data for only as long as is required. This is the minimization restriction and the retention restriction. That's it. Should we do a test? Has everyone got those 3? Excellent. Let's move on. Especially when tested afterwards. Do you know the GDPR? Okay. So all of this has not been invented by Justice Sri Krishna. This has been in the law since the 1970s. And was most recently brought in to the public consciousness with the General Data Protection Regulation, which was enacted in Europe. And it says all of these things. Do you remember when GDPR was first released in 2018? We got a flurry of emails from every European company or anyone who had anything to do with Europe, basically saying, can you opt into my service? Can you say that you agree to my privacy policy? Remember that? It's happening now with cookies. Every time you go to a website, the website says, accept all or manage. And how many of you press manage? Anyone? Oh, very impressive. Because if you take the trouble to press the manage, you'll find that they're doing some shady stuff at the back, right? If you accept all, it's all sorts of other things they're picking up. But it's frustrating to have to engage with technology in this manner. This is what I call doing privacy by regulation. And as a lawyer, I'm sorry to say we do this really badly. So the idea that I want to present to you is, can we do privacy by design? Can we design privacy into the products that we make, into the services that we provide? And in order to do that, let me just do a thought experiment here. I'll give you some examples. I'm not a designer, so I'm just picking up stuff that I see. It's none of the stuff that I've done. But let's just take those 3 principles and see how we can apply them. Yeah? Oh, sorry, I should say first. Privacy by design is not my idea. It was invented by Anne Kevorkian. Anne Kevorkian is the Privacy Commissioner of Canada. And long before me and long before Justice Sri Krishna, she realized that this regulation thing is not the way to do it. So just as a lawyer, I have to put the disclaimer up front in case someone says that I invented this. Okay, so let's take notice and consent. And let's actually just break that up into parts. Let's just take notice first. How do we provide people with notice of what we're doing? Is there a design intervention that we can use? If you look, and I use an Apple phone, so sometimes some of these examples are just what I'm seeing, but if you look at the way Apple does it, they've come up with a whole lexicography of privacy. They've got little images which talk about what information you're picking. Can we do something like this? Can we engage with people in this manner so we can tell them what you're picking up and what you're not? And it actually extends into the product as well. And sometimes when you're on your screen, as I was coming here, trying to find my way here, switch to Twitter, but right there at the top, you can see that little blue thing which says that some app on your phone is still picking up your location. And your location is personal information at that point in time. When you are on Zoom and you switch to something else, you've still got a little orange dot at the top of your screen which says the camera is still on. Now, if you remember that you switched to Zoom, that's fine. Sometimes you're waiting on Zoom and you switch to something else and you're scratching your nose and everyone who is in the room is already watching you. It's useful to have something like this. So can we build these things that give us They provide us notice of what information is being collected from us. Let's look at consent. Now, we lawyers we just love legal language. And if you look at the terms of service, and this is the Twitter terms of service, and I think I must have scrolled 4 or 5 pages to come here. How many of you have read the Twitter terms of service? I can see 2 hands up. I'm so amazed and so impressed. Do you work at Twitter, by the way, the 2 of you? Because I haven't read the Twitter terms of service, and I get paid to do this stuff. The reason why no one has read it is because they're so deadly dull. They're so boring. And if no one reads it and just presses I agree, can you say they've consented to it? Because if you haven't read it, what have you consented to? But still, we scroll through and we consent because we've got to get on with our lives. Is there another way to do this? And I came across this website, photographers may have seen it, called 500px.com. I don't think any of you have gone to their terms of service because it's a work of art. They've got the legalese here, and then they've got a basic legal. So 6 lines. Basically, by using 500px, you agree to all of the above, all of the below. Can we try and make consent more accessible? Can we try and provide ways in which people can understand what it is that they're signing up to? When we collect information in this manner, can we turn those buttons by default to off? I know it's a pain because, if you really want that information, you would like to turn it to on such that they just scroll down and just say, I agree. But that's not really privacy preserved. So get people to opt in as opposed to having them go into settings and opt out at a later point in time. Okay, let's go to the next one, purpose limitation. When you read the terms of service, if you have read it, the 2 of you, I'm looking at you, you accept it to just about everything. And there are some websites where some terms of service actually have things like, on the 7th day after the full moon, you will make a and it's all there, right? There's a sacrifice of your firstborn, all of that, and you've signed up to. They do that because they know no one has read it. So is there a way, and the reason why they shove it all up front is because it's a pain coming to you again and again and saying, look, I want to use it for this other thing, can I get your permission? So you shove everything up in that. Is there a way to design so that you can get the purpose consent each time you do something? Now, India's come up with this framework called the DEPA framework. It's been implemented recently in the account aggregator framework. This is a post-collection transfer. If you don't know about this, read about it, because this is the largest open banking drawer anywhere in the world. At this point in time, there are 1.1 billion accounts connected to the account aggregator framework. Oh, that's really cool. So the reason why I'm talking to you about it is because every time you ask for information, you send it through a consent manager and get consent just in time. And it's all done electronically, and the RBI approves of it. Is there things like this that we can innovate? And can we do it in a way that is efficient? Okay. Minimization and retention. Let's just go to minimization. How do you collect only as much information as you want? And how do you fight against that deep instinct that is inside all of you as you design products to collect information, because at some point in time it might be useful? So I don't know if you guys have seen this website. It's just a really neat little blog. It's called nishless.blog. Just a guy who's not a coder did it in his spare time. 300 words per post. So it's longer than Twitter and it's shorter than blogger. I'm telling my age by saying but essentially he said, look, I'm designing a product where I don't want to collect any information. I don't want to monetize. I just absolutely don't want anything. And he had a privacy policy that he picked up from the web, and it is the standard privacy policy with everything. So I said, if you are going to be so front foot with regard to your approach to privacy, can I redesign your privacy policy? And so I wrote something like this. Essentially it says that I will collect your email address. You can give me your name, you don't have to. You can post something, you don't have to post. If you post and there's some information on it, I will not process it. This is essentially a statement that I am not going to collect any of your information, I'm not going to process it at all, except for that one piece of information I need, which is your email address. Now, these are not formulas. I think, do what you think is appropriate, but keep in mind that there's really no need to collect more information than you absolutely need to. Okay, the final thing, retention. And as I said, I'm a lawyer, I have no idea why I'm here. The only reason why I'm here actually is because Jay and I, we've never met, we've just met like 2 hours ago, worked together on a project that when people knew that I was working on it, they said, how could you sell your soul? How could you do this? You're a privacy lawyer, how could you get involved in this? And so, Jay and I know that it's not as bad as it is cracked up to be. When we were working on it, we thought we would be able to stop the pandemic. But this pandemic could not be stopped with technology and all of that. But one of the things that I'm really proud of that we've achieved in this is the retention, limitation, implementation. You know what COVID is about, right? Essentially you get it, and in those days, we knew at worst, you will have it for 14 days, and then after that, it's over. And so the question I was asking the government is, why do you want data longer than 14 days? The government said, we don't know yet. So I said, okay, why do you want data for longer than 30 days? And so in Arogya Setu, we implemented a data retention strategy that deleted the data off your phone every 30 days. What does that mean? That means that if this whole thing goes bad, and if all this data is stuck in some data warehouse, and that data warehouse gets hijacked, at worst, we've lost 30 days worth of very personally sensitive information. Where we've been, who we've met. Now, all of these are just sort of examples that I've picked out of my head. But this is privacy by design, and I've given you the tools to try and implement some of these things in your design work. And I'm sure that you guys are going to do a better job than we have. Thank you.
Okay, many questions.
No one understood anything I said.
They understood it, and they think you are the devil incarnate. No, you're not. Kumar Abhishek asks, most of the users new to the internet millions are not worried about privacy. I'm guessing implicit in the question is that they're trading off for convenience. So what Google will do anything about me, but you're going to give me good shopping recommendations for shoes and bags. So why should I care? And should people care if the convenience outweighs the privacy concerns?
So I look at this, privacy and convenience, and there are many such things as trade-offs that each of us have to make. And so if you're designing products, try and allow people to make these trade-offs. Some people say, what's his name? Kumar wants the convenience, and he doesn't care if everyone knows everything because he's got nothing to hide. So dial it down. Get the convenience. But I'm not like that. So don't sell me a product that's designed for Kumar, or at least if you're selling me a product that's designed for one, allow me the ability to calibrate the settings for what I want. And I would push back because, of course, if you're thinking about Amazon recommendations, you can weigh convenience with privacy. But there are many things where you don't want to make that trade-off. And each of us has a different set of parameters that we will not trade off our privacy against. We did a survey, we went all the way into India, and we said, look, if you're telling someone, I will give you money if you give me my privacy, in the poorest parts of the country, they will say, take my privacy because I want money. But they all have a line they will not cross. And we don't know where that line is. So we've got to design such that we can allow everyone to draw their own line when it comes to the products.
Okay, Rahul, here's another problem. Most people in this room, designers, are nice guys. We're all happy to follow the rules, the guidelines that you set for us vis-a-vis making notice and consent, purpose limitation, and retention but
really impressed.
we're all perfectly happy to do this, but many of us work for evil capitalist overlords. But we are perfectly happy to design for privacy. Our decisions are going to get overridden by evil capitalist overlords, who are also your clients, by the way. And they're going to make the decision anyway. We're just going to design the best we can under the circumstances. So how do you think design can really intervene or make a meaningful intervention in what you're saying?
I mean, the same way I'm doing it, right? Because these are all my clients as well, right? You do it through guerrilla warfare. That's what you have to do.
Are you saying you're not an evil overlord?
I'm not.
Okay.
I have a heart of gold. But it is possible because most people aren't seeing these things. Most people aren't seeing that the radio button is set to off instead of on. I mean, they've given it to a designer. You're going to design it the best they can. Sometime later they'll say, hey, why are we not getting as much information as our competitor? And then they realize the radio button was turned off, and then they'll say, but this is what you do. Find surreptitious ways. I mean, the Aroge Setu thing was a complete under the radar type of thing. You think the government doesn't want to collect as much information as it wants. So you do it in this way. You say, what are you going to do with this data beyond 30 days? And they say, actually, nothing. And then before they change their mind, they say, okay, then we'll just delete it after 30 days. And they say, okay, that's what you're saying.
So be a bit subversive? Alright. Okay. Katya Forbes asks, what are your thoughts on the monetization of health data from fitness and activity tracking at the base level to more personal, such as pacemaker and cardiac data? Should we own our own health data? How do we maintain control over this? When, by definition, we have to share it with somebody, a doctor or a fitness app or somebody.
Gosh, such a deep question. It's an hour's worth of a...
Yeah, you have 1 minute to answer it.
So obviously, I'm in favor of it. This is tracking my information all the time. It tells me how I sleep, it tells me how I work out, it does now SpO2, everything, right? So it's constantly picking this up. And I mean, there is a risk. I don't know if you know this, but Fitbit accidentally released information about the sexual habits of people. Because you realize that if you've got a wearable, it actually can pretty much figure out the way you're moving and what you're doing. Now, how do you deal with this? So essentially, I think you've once again got to draw your own line. The best way to do this is actually take this ring off, and you don't want to know anything about you. Take your phone off. Then by that time, you're not working in the world that we know. The other way to do it is to sort of say, look, I'm getting some value out of it. In order for them to give me the value, I have to give them something, and that sort of is the balance. You certainly don't want someone doing this without your permission, so someone picking this information up from somewhere else and then coming to some conclusions about you. Just a trade-off once again, I'm sorry. That's ultimately all of these things are trade-offs. What we don't do is we don't design to offer people trade-offs. We design with one image in mind, and very often it is the evil capitalist overlord who only wants money, who only wants shareholder value. Can we start to try and design for all of society?
Okay, next question is in line with what you just said. Are there examples of business models where privacy first leads to more profit?
Of course.
Like ESG compliant companies could actually be more profitable than non-ESG compliant companies.
So to say that it leads to more profit is a loaded statement, right? Because I think in a surveillance capitalist first world, people are making a lot of money now doing this. There are people that are still successful. I haven't used Google, I'm going to say, for a decade. I've used DuckDuckGo, and DuckDuckGo is a privacy-first search engine. I have no idea how they make money. I mean, I do.
But the search engines are not annoying over. Google knows exactly what you want.
I have no clue, because for the last 10 years I've been using DuckDuckGo and I've survived in this world. I've written a book and I've written...
You can survive without Google is technically possible.
Just use DuckDuckGo.
Okay, I think we've shot well over your time. Rahul Matthan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For being on the stage.